Let's talk about identifying hidden costs and inefficiencies. This is the fun part. This is where we get to put intentionality and efficiency and optimization all into one bucket of our financial awareness. Benjamin Franklin said, "Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship." The objective of this lesson is to help you spot leaks, reduce waste, and make every dollar in your business intentional and productive. Every expense should either save time or make money. All right. So step one is to start with financial awareness. Before you can cut costs, you have to see them clearly. So this lesson builds directly on what we covered in the budgeting and financial awareness lesson. Now that you're tracking your income and expenses, you are ready to evaluate what's actually working. Why this is important is because you can't grow profitably without knowing what's helping and what's hurting. So many business owners think that they have an income problem when they actually have a spending problem. Knowing where the money is leaking gives you freedom, not restriction. So I know sometimes it can feel restricting to come in and slash the budget and slash the expenses, but this is actually how you get more freedom in your business. So we're going to spot the leaks. Most inefficiencies start small. A subscription here, an upgrade there, a slow profit drain. So how you can find them is you can look through your profit and loss sheet for categories labeled convenient or review, and we're going to do that together now. You can compare your expenses month to month, and you can ask yourself, if I cut this today, would my revenue or my client experience actually drop? Some common links to look for that we're going to look for in our profit and loss spreadsheet is duplicate tools or overlapping software, subscriptions you forgot about, unused courses or memberships, or contractors or services that you've outgrown. Right? For example, once I realized I was paying for 2 email platforms. One was for my main list and another was for an old funnel. Cutting that expense saved $80 a month, which is nearly $1,000 a year for something I wasn't even using. Another example of this is I realized that I was paying for both ConvertKit and Kajabi for email, nearly $100 extra a month. Canceling one saved me $1,200 a year with zero impact on my business. That's what we're going to go look for now. So let's jump over to your financial dashboard. We're going to come to the profit and loss tab. All right, let's look for some hidden inefficiencies together. All right, so we are on the expenses part of this profit and loss spreadsheet. And I've got a column here for you with some fun little tabs in here. And you can put the date that you last reviewed it. So put in today's date if you're going to go review this today, because you'll want to know how long it's been since you last reviewed all of your expenses. All right, because you can't just do this once and then let it sit and come back a year later, never having looked at it again. Okay, so your contract labor. This is an interesting area to explore. And you might be surprised if you actually sit with the question. Let's go back and look at this question. If I cut this today, would my revenue or client experience actually drop? So that's the lens that we're looking through all of these through, okay? So your client support specialist, if you let them go today, would your revenue drop or your client experience drop? For me and my business, yes, it would, because I don't have the time or space to manage all of our clients. I really need this help. So for me, that's a mandatory. Sales reps, same thing for me. Now, this may or may not be true for you. So evaluate each of these positions honestly and thoughtfully. Your VA, you might say, oh yeah, I definitely need a VA. But what is your VA doing? What tasks are they doing? Is it actually, would your revenue decrease or would your client experience decrease if your VA was gone? All right. Maybe your VA is doing tasks that free up a lot of your time so that you can serve your clients. So maybe it's mandatory. But if they're just doing little things and you're like, actually, it doesn't matter, this may be more of a convenient expense for you. Again, you need to evaluate these. I'm going to put mandatory on video editor because I don't have time to do that. And if you don't know how to edit videos, maybe that's a mandatory expense. If you're like, I could do it so much faster and this expense is a lot, or I have another solution for this, categorize it however you want. I know at one point we had an email copywriter. Okay, so this is a good example of something. My family, my husband's in the military, so we move a lot, and we were moving over a summer. So I hired an email copywriter to write all of our emails because that drives a lot of business for us. And I did not have time to do that over the summer while we were moving. That was just something I couldn't do. So I hired her to do that over the summer. once we got settled and started our new school year, and I was still paying $1,000 a month for a copywriter. At the time, if you would have asked me in July, I would have said this is absolutely a mandatory expense because we make a lot of revenue through our email list, and I can't do this right now in my life, right? So in June, July, August, I would have categorized this as a mandatory expense for us. Come October, I had to really sit with this and say, okay, is this something that I want that is continually mandatory for me? At that point, it turned more into a convenient thing. I had kind of gotten used to not having to do the emails, but $1,000 a month is a lot of money to be paying for something that I now just categorized as a convenient expense. That's why it's important to come back and re-look at these often. Does that make sense? So I actually decided to cut that expense and for the rest of the year, and I found a simpler solution. And I had more time and space in my life to do that. Okay. So this doesn't mean that this was a bad expense. For a while, it was mandatory for me for whatever reason. But you got to come back and review these often because it may not always be the case, right? Sometimes you can control things and sometimes you can't. So transaction fees, for example, the Stripe, charges me 3% and PayPal 3.6. Okay. And it is what it is. I need a payment processor. So that is what it is. But maybe there's a way that doesn't charge me fees, or maybe there's another solution I hadn't thought of. If this was a large expense and taking a lot and it was painful for me, maybe that's something that I could review. It's mandatory for me at the moment. But again, these are things that you can think of and change. Advertising might be one that goes back and forth for you as well, especially if you're spending a lot of money on advertising. If it's not, again, you got to ask this question. If I cut this today, would my revenue or my client's experience actually drop? All right. And these are the questions that you're going to have to, I think we need to review that one, right? Tax payments are mandatory. That's an easy one. You can just leave that blue forever. You got to make your tax payments. Okay. And then apps and software. This is where it can get fun. So one, we're going to come through and we're going to look at, am I still using this app and software? And is it essential for running my business? Okay. QuickBooks is a accounting software for tax purposes. That's mandatory for me. Got to have it. Slack, we use a lot for team communication and it keeps our team on board. That's mandatory for us. Kajabi or Thinkific or wherever you have your course hosted is probably a mandatory cost for you. Although sometimes these costs can inflate over time. And so that's something to look at your plan and make sure you're using all the features on your plan as well. Google Workspace for email, that's mandatory for us. This is our CRM system. This is our email fees that are tied to the CRM system, Bitly. We use that a lot for tracking and rely a lot on that data. So I'm going to keep that as mandatory as well. ChatGPT, we use that for a lot of the SOPs in our business. It's a relatively low expense as well. Claude is probably up for review. It's really similar to ChatGPT. So are we using that? Do we need to keep paying for that? Or can ChatGPT do what we need? Probably review that. ActiveCampaign is an email software. I currently have 2 other platforms that can do email. So probably don't need that one, right? Scribe for our SOPs. This might be mandatory for a while, especially if we are heavily in the process of creating SOPs. But maybe by April, I come back and review this and I'm like, I'm kind of not using that anymore. And we've got all the SOPs we need. So that's something that I need to review and maybe cancel. Same with Typeform. This tends to be a random subscriptions for me sometimes, but some people use this as a really important part of their business. I can do all the things on Typeform on my CRM, for all of our forms and things like that. So I actually probably wouldn't need that one. You know what I mean? You get the idea here. But really looking at through your profit and loss can also highlight things like this. So QuickBooks is a mandatory expense for me. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't ever look at it again, because for a couple months it was $55 and then all of a sudden it was $80, which I didn't realize when I was putting in, March's financials. When I was looking through my business bank account, I just put in QuickBooks, $80, cool. But now looking at this, I can see, oh, that jumped up. From January, I used to pay $55. Now I'm paying $80. What happened there? So you can go in and you can look, well, this is a mandatory expense. Like I need this software. Why am I paying $80 when I used to pay $55? So this is something that I can go and look in. And you might be thinking, oh, $25, is that anything? It adds up, okay? Because now I'm at $75. And over the year, it can really add up for you. Another area to look at is your miscellaneous expenses. So once you've gone through all of these things, am I still using all of these? Are they essential for my business, or are they just convenient? Things like that. Come down and look at your miscellaneous expenses. What are you paying for? Again, $11 might not seem like a lot, but if it's a membership that you don't even remember what it is, or you are not actively using that, or it's just to be listed on a directory somewhere, that might need a review. Okay. You're thinking $11, that's not that much. This adds up. All right. And it's $132 a year. And if you have multiple of these, you could be wasting $1,000, right? You could take yourself out for a nice weekend getaway with $1,000. So it's worth it to come through and do this exercise. I actually do it monthly or even every other month. Quarterly at minimum is what I would recommend, once a quarter. So the major quarters are usually January, April, July, and October. Those are the quarters there for you. So you come in and make sure that you're reviewing, looking for hidden inefficiencies in your profit and loss spreadsheet. All right. Once you've identified the leaks, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. All right. Look for high spend, low return items. So like ads, tools, team members not pulling their weight, process bottlenecks. What are some manual tasks that you could automate? All right. Because now we're not only wasting money at this point, we're wasting time, right? Overlapping tools, paying for two apps that do the same thing, or underpriced offers. All right. Can be a nice time to look at your offer and say, is the price worth what it is? Do we just have a little profit because our pricing is off? Some practical steps here are to color code each of those on your spreadsheet like we just showed you. You can schedule a reminder. Again, quarterly is probably what I would recommend at a minimum. And then you can also check your key metric sheet to look for other areas. Is your profit margin improving over time? Are you getting better results per dollar spent? That can be a fun thing to look at as well. So your profit margin is calculated here in your, and it should be color coded for you as well. So we don't have data in all of these months, and we just put in a lot of expenses. So that's, what it is. But is this number going up, or is it staying stable at least? If you're having more revenue and you're keeping your expenses low, you should see this number go up. At some point, it can't go up anymore, and you just have to settle into your norm. But that can be a fun number to look at as well. For example, I used to pay $600 a month in ads, but never tracked conversions. Once I did, I realized that $400 of that spend was not producing sales. So cutting it back gave an instant 8% profit increase, because now you're saving $400 a month. All right. That's a lot per year for almost $5,000. And it's going to increase your profit. All right. So these are the benefits of the little tiny hidden inefficiencies that you might think are worth nothing, but it's important. Simplifying your finances simplifies your thinking. So when your systems are lean and purposeful, you can make faster, better decisions. I want you to be using as little apps and software and team members as possible, but don't be afraid also to use tools. That's what they're there for. So here's a couple of things to do. Aim for one main tool in each category: email, project management, payment processing, etc. Reduce decision fatigue. So if you have fewer platforms, you have fewer logins, you have fewer places to lose money. You can also automate any automatic transfers so that your structure runs even when you're busy. I have almost everything set up automatically in and out on my business because I don't mess with manual stuff. That is lame. Every time you remove something unnecessary, you actually make space for what truly matters. And this is more to do with just saving money. It really is a mindset shift. Cutting costs, again, is not about restriction. You're not about being cheap or doing the bare minimum. It really is about stewardship. You're learning to manage money like a CEO instead of reacting like a freelancer. So remember, you are the financial gatekeeper of your business. Efficiency creates freedom, and every dollar you protect today becomes a future opportunity. The goal is not to cut everything. It really is to keep only what truly serves you and your mission. The simpler your financial systems become, the easier it is to grow with confidence and peace of mind. So your action steps in this lesson are to audit your expenses. Go and review the last 3 months of your business spending. Mark each line as mandatory, convenient, or review. And then set a quarterly expense review. Right? Add it to your calendar right now. Put an actual appointment with yourself to review your expenses. Reviewing this regularly keeps your business lean and intentional. We also have a lesson on ROI, calculating ROI for things, which is your return on investment. This can help you evaluate tools, time, and opportunities, which is pretty cool. And then celebrate every growth that you have in your business, including savings. Remember, every dollar you reclaim is another step toward profit and runway. Financial awareness is key, and identifying these little things can really, really add up. Good luck.